probably thought Corona was over. 2 long years. You're still trying to figure out what that meant. What happened there exactly? Tony Fauci left. He's not here to tell us, but he's back, like the groundhog, with a brand new but strangely familiar warning. And then Russia has issued a threat to the United States as the war in Ukraine continues. We'll have a live report from Ukraine next. The Ukrainian city of Mariupol is apparently decimated after days of heavy bombing. The capital of Kiev also faced a day of intense shelling. Peace talks are underway, so far yielding no fruit. In the meantime, our Greg Palcott is in Ukraine for us tonight with the very latest. Hey, Greg.
Hi, Tucker. Yeah, it's a bit quiet here in Lviv tonight, but we are getting reports in the last couple of hours of new artillery clashes in the south and the eastern part of this country. The main Russian forces remain sitting outside of the capital, Kyiv, but indiscriminate artillery fire is hitting residential buildings. The suburbs are being pounded. There's death and destruction all around. Yeah, there's a possible small miracle in the city of Mariupol. Some survivors are said to have been pulled out of that theater turned into a shelter for hundreds, which was destroyed by Russian airstrikes. But yes, the horrible siege of that city goes on. It's expected Russia will try to take it over in the next couple of days. In Kharkiv, widespread damage, 21 reported killed. Just one of many other hotspots. The Ukrainian military is actually, Tucker, doing quite a brave job against that bigger Russian foe. The Pentagon today says Ukraine forces have killed 7,000 Russian troops. Finally, a bizarre warning from the former president of Russia, now a security official, Dmitry Medvedev. He basically said that Russia had the right to put the U.S. in its place for, get this, stirring up, quote, disgusting Russophobia. Interesting take. Back to you.
Greg Palcott for us. Thank you. So you may have noticed that Tony Fauci disappeared for a while. We had no idea where he went. We guessed Vegas. We weren't sure. Yet today, like a groundhog, he reemerged. He missed his power. He wants it back. Fauci declared that COVID isn't over till he says it's over. Watch.
Do you think it was too soon to move to the new metrics that allow so many Americans to not have to wear masks?
Jake, it's not too soon if you observe the caveat that's associated with that. And the caveat is we need to be flexible. And if, in fact, we do see a turnaround and a resurgence, we have to be able to pivot and go back to any degree of mitigation that is commensurate with what the situation is. So we can't just say we're done. Now we're going to move on. We've got to be able to be flexible.
Oh, we've got to be flexible in dealing with COVID, says Tony Fauci. What does that mean exactly? Well, we got some hint in today's White House briefing. A reporter tried to get an answer to that question. He wanted to know if the elderly, here's a rhetorical question for you, are at greater risk from COVID than young people are. What do you think the answer is? You know the answer, of course. Everyone does. Here's how Joe Biden's publicist answered the question.
If a president, 79 years old, president of the United States, were to get COVID, might be more serious than somebody in their 20s?
Well, we don't know that, but we also know that COVID impacts people of all ages and a range of. But when we take what we do here, Jen, is not exactly as you said. So I wouldn't agree with your description there.
So she wouldn't agree with the assertion that a 79-year-old is at greater risk from being hurt by COVID than, say, a 22-year-old. Everyone's got the same risk. That's what she said. Dr. Scott Atlas is, as you may know, a doctor. He's the author of A Plague Upon Our House, My Fight at the Trump White House to Stop COVID from Destroying America. A fight, sadly, he lost, but he waged valiantly. Dr. Scott Atlas joins us tonight. Doctor, thanks so much for coming on. So just to get the factual baseline set here, does a 79-year-old face a greater risk from COVID than, say, a 22-year-old?
It's shocking that the question even has to be asked at this point. I mean, this is one of the clear facts that has been known since spring of 2020. Okay, we're now more than 2 years after knowing that it's thousands times more risk of death for people who are older than people who are younger. And that's just an example of a complete denial of fact that the public keeps being inundated with, and it's very harmful. I think we have to understand something. When do we admit that the person in charge of the policy, Dr. Fauci, his advice has been wrong and a failure? His advice was followed, and it failed to stop the spread of the infection. It failed to stop people from dying, and it killed and destroyed millions, including sacrificing our children. That policy was a failure, yet somehow this person is given credence when he says we have to go and reinstitute his own policies that have failed. We have to realize also that the Western European countries are pure countries, even with their case numbers going up, given that these cases are very, very low lethality, they are eliminating their restrictions. Their cases are going up, yet places like the UK, Switzerland, and elsewhere in Western Europe are realizing that most people have had the infection and have natural protection, and the overwhelming percentage of people have had the vaccines as well. And so they are stripping away these edicts that are ineffective and failed. At some point, if we keep going back to that, we are going to be known as the flat earth nation.
Well, I think we may already be there. I mean, so if the spokesperson is telling us something that every living American who can read knows is demonstrably, provably untrue, what does that tell you? Do they expect us to believe it? Do they just expect us to mindlessly accept it? Like, what's the strategy here exactly, do you think?
Well, it's hard to figure their strategy, but what their strategy has done is it has created a massive mistrust in our public health agencies. The politicization and mistrust of science has been extraordinarily harmful. The whole expert class has failed here, and that includes the leadership class in universities and in government, and of course, as you know, in the media. And so now the burden is shifted to individuals to be thinking adults, to be critical thinkers, to make an effort to understand who's saying what that's reasonable, to learn some of the data, and make the best decisions for themselves and their families.
That is such a wise point, though. The cost in trust is just beyond figuring. People don't believe in gravity or photosynthesis anymore. They've been lied to so much. It's really very, very sad to watch. I am sad to see it. Dr. Atlas, I appreciate your coming on tonight and for all you've done. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
So over at the New York Times, they go through at least once a year to sort of